I think the first one is the risk of which is really increasing at the moment is that of protests. Brazil is going through something of a political crisis at the moment, and the impeachment process has mobilised lots of leftist activists who are against the impeachment. Given that the Olympics is going to be a big global event, it's likely that they'll use that to convey their message to the world. What this means is that activists, particularly around venues in the central and the south zone, are likely to stage protests, including blocking roads around venues and in other large public spaces where they can get a lot of media attention. And the main risk of that really is the violence between protesters and the police. The police in Rio frequently use pepper spray, stun grenades, rubber bullets, particularly against protesters that try to block roads. One thing that people can do is by monitoring activists who often publicise where they're going to be meeting or marching, so that people have a good idea about what locations marches are going to be going through, and where sort of any hot spot points for the security forces are likely to be. The big one that is always a concern is street crime. The levels of crime in Rio have increased over the past year. Street muggings and robberies are a fairly common occurrence, including in tourist zones and commercial zones where many visitors are likely going to stay. So even though the organisers have said that there's going to be close to 70,000 security personnel on the streets, just the dynamics of crime and the way that criminals operate mean that it probably will continue to be a problem. And that can affect media workers as well as other visitors as well, particularly those who are carrying expensive-looking equipment, and especially if journalists are operating in parts of the city that they might not be very familiar with. There is a threat of terrorism. When we think about Islamic or Islamist or jihadist-style terrorism, we think that the possibility of attack is sort of medium. It's possible but unlikely. This is because there are no known operating terrorist groups in the country. Brazil has no history of mass casualty terrorist attacks. Politically, Brazil is not aligned with the conflicts in Syria and Iraq, and also monitoring of jihadist forums and online chatter among jihadists has not suggested that people are talking about Brazil, and we haven't seen any mentions in these forums about the upcoming Olympics. Yes, Rio is ready for the Olympics. Despite a lot of media attention around the venues, most appear to be in the final stages of completion. The one concern that people have is around the transportation system, particularly the construction of the new metro line. Officials say that it's going to be ready just 4 days before the Olympics begin, which doesn't give much time to iron out any problems or creases. What happens if that isn't ready? But otherwise, a lot of the preparations and plans seem to be in place. And although it's certainly not going to be the slickest and most pristine global event that we've seen in the recent past, as is Brazil's way, it will find a way to get things done.